Hey friends, welcome. My name is Marina. I'm the founder of Creatively, and we are going to be painting Life's a Beach. Super excited about this one. So I am going to go over all of the materials that I have in front of me. And in the meantime, you could continue your setup. You could grab a drink. This is kind of your time to get ready. So we have a 12 by 12 canvas. We have 5 colors of paint. It's white, phthalo blue, phthalo green, fire red, and chrome yellow. So the red and the yellow, we're not going to be using a lot of. So just put a little bit on your palette paper. And we also have some palette paper, which is used to mix the colors. So I have it facing shiny side up. Very important. And if you guys are using the little paint pods that came with your Creatively box, you could just scoop out the paint a little at a time, just so the paint stays clean inside of your paint pods. And maybe if you don't use all of it up, you could use it for your next painting. Who knows? So we also have a cup with water. And then we have 3 brushes for this painting. So we have a large brush. This one is a size 16 flathead. And then we also have a size 4 round head brush. And then one of my favorite tools, we also have a fan brush. This one's a size 2, but you could use a slightly bigger one. And you could also, if you do not have a fan brush, don't worry, you could also use an old toothbrush, an old trick. I'll show you how to do that later on. So all we need, just 3 tools here. We make it super easy with the Creatively box. We don't like to use a lot of tools. We keep it very simple. So then we also have our paper towel, and then we have our step-by-step instructions and the reference photo here, very important, so you could see what you're painting. And the printed step-by-step instructions help you follow along, but also if you want to skip ahead a few steps, if maybe you are taking your time and you're behind a couple of steps, you could also use this as a guide while the video is playing. So totally up to you. We give you options. And then if you got the Creatively box, you could also fold it into an easel, my favorite part. So I'll show you how to do that. It takes about 20 seconds or so. All you need is a piece of tape, and that's pretty much it. So all you need to do is fold the lid back of the box, and then just put a piece of tape on one side, and then a piece of tape on the other side. And then it stands up like this on your table, and then you could put your canvas inside here. So really easy to set up, really convenient, and it gives you the opportunity to look at your painting from a distance. All right, so we are all set up and ready to go. Are you guys ready? Hopefully you are. And we are going to start with our Creatively pledge. So I'm going to ask you to please raise your large brush in the air and please repeat after me. I promise to relax and have fun, to not judge my painting or the painting of others, and to be fearless. Yes, and now we are ready to start. Let's do this. So I just want to say this painting is one of my favorites. I know I say this a lot, but it truly is. Super fun, really playful, and it gives you the opportunity to be really creative. So definitely just focus on the process, have fun, take risks, and see what happens. You can't really mess up with this one. And what a perfect way to end the summer. So the first step is going to be to wet your large brush. And we are going to cover this entire canvas with a light bluish color. So I'm going to say this several times throughout, but I just want to emphasize that this is your painting and you get to decide what colors you use. So if you want your sky to be a night sky, a sunset, a sunrise, a cloudy day, you could always change it up and do your own thing while I'm instructing. So feel free to break any rules at any time. This is not, you don't get to hear that often. So If I'm making my sky a light blue color, feel free to use a light purple or pink, or add some variation like clouds. Definitely just have fun with it and see what happens. So I am going to take a lot of white and a little bit of the blue and mix it up to get this really pretty sky blue color. And I'm just gonna go in here and cover up pretty much my entire canvas. So feel free to change to even a larger brush so you could cover this area pretty quickly. And it doesn't really matter what direction your strokes are going in. You could go horizontally, you could go diagonally. Probably I would not go vertically, but feel free to experiment and see what happens. So I'm kind of starting to cover up this canvas, and I want to make sure that I'm not seeing any white through my canvas. So I want to make sure the paint is thick enough to cover the canvas, but also I don't want to make it too thick yet because I kind of need it to dry a bit for the next step. So you could also use a little bit of water to help spread your paint out on the canvas. And I'm getting these nice variations in my color, which is kind of cool. And when you think about the sky, it changes into different colors. It has these gradual, subtle changes. So it's okay if your brush strokes are adding variation to your color. And it's actually going to give it a little bit more interest. So you could also paint the sides of your canvas while you're adding this background. So if you cover up all sides of this canvas, it'll make it look more finished. And then if you choose to hang it up in your house, which I hope you will, it just looks like it's almost framed and definitely gives it that finished look. So I'm continuing to mix my color into the white. And just going right in here and adding this color throughout. And if you want to be a little playful, you could also add just a little red into your palette to create this purplish color and just add it into your background and see what happens. So definitely optional. And I'm just blending it right in to this color and just taking it up. And it's super subtle. You probably can't even see it on my screen, but it's there. And the great part about acrylic is that you could change up your colors anytime. You could always paint over your original color. So if you don't like how the light purple came out, you could always take it away by going back in with your light blue. So we're gonna go in with this light blue color, and you could just cover it up if you want to. So now we covered up all of our background, and feel free at this time to add in other colors to your sky, especially in the top half of the canvas, because that's really what's going to show. So you can go in with a light pink color, a light purple, an orange, totally up to you. You could even add a sun there. You could add some clouds. So definitely feel free to just go crazy and just go for it. But I'm going to let this dry just a little bit, maybe like 2 minutes or so. And you could just wash your large brush for now. And you could take your canvas and just wave it around a little bit, give it some air. You could also use a blow dryer, but totally not needed. Definitely optional. And maybe grab another drink. All right, so now that I have my entire canvas covered, it's time to start the wave, which is a really fun process. So I'm gonna use my large brush for this. So the first thing that I wanna do is I wanna start creating this curvy shape right away. So I'm gonna maybe map it out just a little bit. And for that, you could take just a slightly darker blue color so you could see it on your canvas. So I'm gonna take some blue and a little bit of white and get a slightly darker color. And then I'm gonna create my first swoosh, which might feel intimidating to some, but just remember, this is just a guide for you to know where your wave is, and you could always change up the shape. And actually, when I painted this original painting, I changed up this curve maybe like 10 times or so. So definitely, if you don't get it right the first time, the second time, the third time, it's totally okay. You could just keep changing it up. With acrylic paint, it's super easy. You could just paint right over it. So I'm gonna take this color and I'm gonna start from my right side, probably about 2/3 of the way. So maybe like here or so. And then I'm gonna create my first curve. So it's just gonna go out to the left, up, and around. Kind of like that. Very easy shape, so just a curve. And then I'm gonna create more of these lines to guide me, and all of them are going in the same direction and following the shape of this wave. And if you want, you could make the inner part of your wave a little bit shorter. You can make it a little bit more circular. You can make it into a heart shape. Totally up to you. And the best part is you could always just keep changing it around and see what you like. So I might want to go in here and maybe make this part a little bit rounder. But it doesn't need to be perfect, and you could always just keep working at it and change it up. Just make sure that all of your lines are going in the same direction. So we're gonna start covering up some of the wave by just going in here and adding these curvy lines, these curvy strokes to your painting. So I'm going in here with kind of like a medium blue. So I'm just mixing a little bit of white into my blue and just going right in here with my strokes. And I want to leave a few gaps in my wave just for these lighter colors, because if you cover the entire wave up with a dark color, it'll be a little bit difficult to add the lighter colors, and you're going to have to do a lot more layers to have them show up. But if you leave some gaps in here for these lighter colors, then you could just go in here, one or two layers, and they show up and they're nice and bright. I'm just going in here, covering up some of my wave, leaving some of these gaps. And just making sure that my strokes are all following the shape of this wave. So they're all coming around and going into this point. So they're all kind of converging at the same point. And if I have some of these lines that are not really going with the shape of the wave, I could always just repaint it over it and just make sure that the lines are following the shape. So I'm just leaving a few gaps in between here and there, just for some of my lighter colors later on. But for now, I'm gonna add some shadows to this wave. So mostly the shadows are gonna be at the bottom of the canvas with this darker blue color. So let's try it. Let's just add a few shadows at the bottom. So I'm taking this phthalo blue color and just going in here and adding the shadow to the wave, and it's also going in the same direction. So it's not perfectly horizontal, it's following the lines of the wave. And the same thing here. And I actually like to use the edge of my brush, not the flat part, because then I could create these lines with the paint. So it's almost like you're creating these streaks with your paintbrush. We're also going to add a few of these dark shadows to the top of this wave and maybe a few going around as well, but it's mostly on the outer edge of the wave. And it's a little bit spontaneous. It's kind of randomly placed, these lines. And you could always go back in with the dark blue later on after a few steps. So don't worry if maybe you didn't add enough blue or you added too much. We're gonna start adding other colors, which is super fun. And then you could always take away some of those colors and add the blue back. So I'm gonna wash my brush and I'm gonna add this turquoise color, which is one of my favorites. So it's phthalo green mixed with a little bit of white. And feel free to put a little bit of phthalo blue in there, maybe a little bit of yellow, see what happens. But it's just such a stunning color. And it's like a beautiful Caribbean beach color. So I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna add some of these strokes of this color going around and following the shape of the wave. Isn't it such a stunning color? I love it. And you could vary it up a bit. So you could add some darker strokes of this greenish turquoise. You could add some lighter ones. Your strokes definitely don't need to be placed in the same areas where I'm placing them because it really doesn't matter where you put them as long as it's creating this curved shape and you're following the lines of this curve. So maybe I'll add a little bit of blue to my color. I'll see what happens. And then I'll add a little white and I'll get this bluish green color, which is also really beautiful. And I could go in here and add some strokes of this color as well. And we could also go in with this dark green color and just add some strokes of this dark green where you had your blue shadows. So you're just building up these layers of color in your wave. And feel free to change to your smaller round brush if you want to add smaller strokes of color. And I might actually do that in a bit. So if you're switching brushes, just make sure to wash your other brush so that the paint doesn't dry up. And I could go in here and add these smaller strokes of color. But I kind of want to keep my strokes pretty loose, so I'm going to switch back to my large brush and not worry so much about the details. So I'm going to try to add a little more shadow onto the bottom here. And I want to make sure that I'm covering up this the white parts of my canvas. And you could go in here with a lighter blue color as well. And kind of see what happens. So then we could also go in with a light purple color because that'll keep things a little more interesting. So I could go in here with some phthalo blue, some white, and some red. And this is totally optional, guys, so you could choose which colors you want for your wave. You could keep it a light bluish green color if you want without adding these additional strokes of color, but I think it's just super fun and really playful, and it kind of looks like the sun is reflecting on this wave and it's giving it these various colors, which is pretty cool. So I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna add some purplish strokes in here as well. And I'm keeping it pretty spontaneous. I don't really know where I'm placing these strokes. It's just kind of freestyle in here. You could see there's some subtle purple colors. I'm gonna add some pink. For that, I'm gonna switch to my small brush and I'm gonna try to make my paint strokes pretty thick with this brush so they actually show up on the canvas. And I might need to do a few layers, but I'll see how it goes. So I'm gonna add a little bit of white to my red color to create this pink color. And then I'm just gonna go in here and add some strokes of this pink. And just remember, you could always remove it. So if you added a stroke in a place where you don't like it, you could always just take the blue and paint over it. Just wait for it to dry a little bit and then paint over it with the blue color. So that way, completely gone. So I might need to do a few layers here. But I'm just adding these small strokes of pink in here in various places. Just remembering to keep all of the strokes going in the same direction following this wave. And some of it is kind of blending into the blue color, which is totally fine. And it's kind of turning into this nice purple color. And I might go back to the pink later on, but for now, I also want to add some yellowish orange color as well. And that's kind of a fun touch if you want to kind of get the sun reflecting on the waves. Like that could be um, you just using this yellowish color in order to achieve that effect. So I'm gonna mix some white, some yellow, and maybe a little bit of red to make it a little bit orange. And we'll see if we like it. We could always change it up. This looks pretty to me, so I'm just gonna go for it and see what happens. I'm just adding some of these variations here. Cool. And if I want to cover up any of these strokes super easy, I could just go over it a little bit with either the turquoise or the light blue. So I could go back in with my turquoise color. And just cover up some of these colors if you want. But it's already looking like a wave, as you can see, and it has these variations of colors, which keeps it really fun. So you could go in here with your large brush and kind of play around with the colors, see where you want to add some shadows, see where you want to add some highlights. So I want to maybe add a few more shadows in the middle here and maybe at the top. So I'm going to go in here either with the phthalo blue color or the phthalo green. And I also want to make sure that I'm not seeing any white through my canvas. So right now, if I lift this up and I give you guys a closer look, you could see there's a little bit of white shining through. So I want to make sure that I cover that up with the paint. I want to get some of these shadows in other places randomly as well, but most of them are concentrated on the outer part of this wave. And I also want to add some highlights. And I can do that on the inner part of this wave, and I'm just dragging these brush strokes, and they're kind of long. And you could keep playing with your colors and just adding more variations. You could add more purples, more pinks, more turquoise color. Totally up to you. You could even build up the texture a little bit, but this is already looking like a wave. I also want to add a little bit of this turquoise color on the inner part of the wave because right now it's looking pretty blue and I want it to look kind of lighter. So I could take some of this turquoise and just go into this wave here. And this is the part where if you want to change up the shape of your wave, you could totally do that here. You could make it less of an opening here. You could make it more of an opening by going in with the sky color and just kind of opening it up. So definitely you could keep on changing its shape. So if I want to make it bigger, I could just like go in here and just make it wider. By adding more of these curves. So there's really no way to mess this up because you could keep on adding, taking away, adding again. So once you're kind of happy with the shape of your wave, I would let this dry just a little bit before we start adding the foam, which is my favorite part. And it's so fun using this little fan brush for that. So again, you could take your canvas, you could wave it around a little bit. You could use a blow dryer. You could grab a drink. Totally up to you. But usually I'm very impatient and I just start painting right away, even though I should have waited. And that's fine too. You might regret it later, but it's fine to try it out. Okay, so I actually need to add more white onto my palette paper. So for this step, I'm gonna use the fan brush here and I'm actually not even gonna put it in water. This is a very stiff bristle fan brush. So it's really good for making foam or splashes. It's really good for making the perfect pine trees. So definitely a really handy tool. Lots of variations. You could make waterfalls with it. Really fun and versatile. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna dip the edges of this fan brush into my white. And then I'm just gonna dab my brush onto the canvas quickly, creating this foam texture. And I'm not sure if you could hear the sound of this brush, but the sound is amazing. So I'm going over the outer edge of this wave and I'm going in different directions, just adding this foam to the top part here. So I'm switching directions with this brush, just going out a little bit, not being afraid to make it really messy. Just cover up some of this wave. And the splashes are gonna go all the way to the end of this swoosh shape. So I'm gonna add a little bit more, just really right on this point, I guess. I'm coming out a bit and getting pretty messy with it. And then we're gonna add more of this white texture to the sides here. So this is going to the top of the canvas and just going out pretty much to the very top. And I'm just dabbing my paintbrush, going in different directions. As you probably know, in nature, nothing is perfect. So you don't need to worry about, where do I put this paintbrush? You just kind of be spontaneous and just put down these strokes. And play around with the paintbrush, kind of you could just wave it around a bit, change its directions, maybe change the part of the brush that you're using. So if you're using just the tip, try maybe putting more of it down, see what happens. This is definitely the part where you could experiment a little bit. So I'm just randomly just applying these flashes here. And if you guys are using a toothbrush, similar technique, usually the toothbrush has pretty rough bristles similar to this. So you could just dab the toothbrush into your white paint and just kind of gently just apply it to your canvas in a very similar fashion. So it's looking pretty cool. I'm gonna add more of these splashes to the right side of my wave, just a little bit. Maybe going up a little bit into the sky. And then you could use your fan brush to also apply some of this foaminess to the inner part of your wave. So I have it just randomly going, just a few strokes of it, maybe going on the outside a little bit, maybe a little bit on the inner part of the wave. Totally up to you. Don't go too crazy with it. Just we're doing it in a very subtle way. So this I'm applying very light pressure with my brush and maybe taking it up a little bit. And then I'm going to add a little bit more into the outer part of my wave. And if it's too much, just remember you could always cover it up with the light blue or the turquoise color or the blue color. So you never need to be afraid whether you could put down this next brush stroke. How's this wave looking, guys? I can't wait to see what you've created. So I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but We love seeing what you guys create. So if you could share it on Facebook or on Instagram and tag us, so either use @creativelybox or #creativelybox, we'll be able to find it. And we love seeing all the different variations of the painting because everyone's looks totally different. And that's the best part. So for the next part, which is probably my favorite part and probably the most fun. It's a little messy, I'm gonna warn you. So just make sure you're wearing your smock. You don't have any valuables around your table. It's about to get really messy. So I'm gonna take my large brush. I'm gonna put this fan brush down for a little bit. So I'm gonna wash it. And I'm gonna put it down for a little bit, and we're gonna do some splashes with this large brush and the small brush. So we have a couple of different techniques. I'm gonna show you all the messy ones. You could also use your toothbrush for this as well. So I'm gonna take this large brush and I'm gonna dip it into the white, and then I'm gonna dip it a little bit into water. And then I'm gonna use my small brush and I'm gonna make a little X with it. And then I'm just gonna hit this large brush with my small one and we're gonna get some splatters. So I advise you to try it out on your palette paper first, get the hang of it, and then move on to your canvas. So that's one technique. And I'm gonna try it out here and I'm gonna see what happens. So you could see I'm getting some splashes on my canvas. It's pretty small, but it looks really cool. So you guys might not be able to see mine, but I'm gonna show you close-ups of it. So let me show you again. I'm gonna dip this into the white, and then I'm gonna dip it a little bit into the water. Make sure you're not using too much water for this. And then I'm gonna see what happens on my palette paper, and then I'm gonna bring it up to here, and then maybe I'll have some splashes on the other side. And then some here. Trying not to get my computer covered in paint. So this is one technique. Another technique, which is a little bit messier, but it gives you a little bit more control, is you could dip your brush into the white, maybe dip it a little bit into water if your white is very thick, like mine, and then you could use your finger to splatter the paint around. So that also works. It gives you a little bit more control of the areas that you're splashing it on. And then you could also do the same thing with an old toothbrush. So you could also dip it a little bit into the white and then go like this to the bristles, and it's gonna splatter the white paint around your canvas. So definitely experiment with the different techniques, see what works well for you. So you could also take your small brush and add some of these bubbles just by using your brush. So just adding these little dots, they're all in different sizes. And you could just add them around in addition to your splatters. I'm adding them kind of in these spontaneous areas. If you're having a hard time with the splatters using the brush technique that I showed you, you could also change out your water and make sure that your water is clean. And that way it'll be easier to use the white paint, because the second I dip it into this murky water, it already doesn't become white. And then it's a little bit hard to see on your canvas because it's more bluish than white. Super cool. So I could use a little bit of my fan brush just to build up some of the texture if I want to. Like for instance, I want it to be a little bit more bubbly in this section. So I could just add a little bit more of this foaminess here. And you can make this part spread out a little bit. And there you guys have it. We did it. Life's a beach. So the last part is going to be to sign your name at the bottom. So your signature is a part of this art piece. So definitely think through where you want to put your name. So usually I do it on the bottom corner of the canvas. You could also do it at the top. Just keep it small and really subtle so it doesn't distract from the piece. So you guys did it. Awesome job. I can't wait to see what you created. Please share on social, on Instagram, on Facebook, and don't forget to follow us as well for more creative tips, for tutorials, and more fun stuff. Thank you guys so much for joining. We'll see you next time.